Hello everyone, in this video we're gonna talk about replication of build system. I decided to make it a separate lesson because not everybody will need it, and also I will make I have already made a replication and I will just show you how to do that, what changes you need. And also I would like to mention that to make it work, your inventory system also should be replicated, and the way of replication is not fit for online games. It fits correctly for co-op games, but not competitive games like MMOs and etc. So let's start. Let's start from our components. Building component should be replicated. So open class defaults and replicate this component, and build part component should not be replicated. Construction, so the same for construction component. Only building component should be replicated. Now let's start. Let's start from spawning a building. We are spawning a building when player equipped hammer. We show the buttons, and when he selects button, we call did select building with class. And here the change is a change. We are calling another event that I've created. Is It's called server spawn building. It's a new event, and on the right side in details, in the replications, we select run on server. Then we create a new event called multicast spawn building, and on the right we select. Oh no, we don't need multicast. We need to spawn building only on server, so it should look something like this. I forgot to change it. I'm sorry. Here it is. So we need this event that runs only on server, and here after spawning an actor, we're setting it replicates manually and setting its movement to replicate. And next we are calling multicast set preview state. After all of that, we are calling a new event called multicast set preview state, because without it, for example, if I will call it only on server, I will show you how it will look like. To, to run in net mode, for example in co-op, I run in as plays listen server, because one will be a server and one will be a client. So on the right side I have a server, and on the left side I have a client. And for example, if now I will build a building, on the right side on server it will look as preview, and on the left side it will look as not as preview. So that's why we need to run multicast set preview state. Here it is. Here we're setting the preview state, and this event calls another event called set preview state. And what it does, uh, it gets our component by class and setting preview state with one one change. Here we're checking if our construction component of selected building is valid. And if it's not, then after delay of 0.1 second, we're calling this event again. Because on time when the cast event is called, we're not sure that construction component of selected building is set up. So we're checking it. Also selected building here should also be replicated. So you can just select not rep notify, but replicate it. And after that, we're setting a preview state. And it will work both for client and server, but you may notice a little delay on client side because we have the check. Here it is. Next, after spawning a building, let me move it a little bit up. After spawning a building, when we have selected building, we also make a trace on event tick. We don't need to make this trace both on server side and client side. We need to make it only on client side. So on the event tick, I've added a check if this component is controlled by a current active character. So the trace will be done only on the machine that is running a game. Here is a check. We're getting a character that is also replicated and checking if it is locally controlled. If true, then we are making a trace and rotating building if needed. So let's go to make trace. I don't remember if yes, I've made a little change here, but I will talk about it later. And now about movement of building. So building can be rotated, but it is a little bit laggy. And I forgot to add to change, I think, upside down movement. Yes, I forgot to change this. So let's do it now. On mouse wheel axis, we are changing current Z offset. So we need to change this current Z offset on both server and client. So let's create a new event, call it server, change current Z offset. And it will have an input offset of flow type. And we need another event called multicast change current Z offset. And server event calls change multicast current Z offset. I will not describe what multicast and acceptor do. And on multicast change current Z offset, we will do this. And here we will call server change current Z offset. And also we should not forget to replicate this function, this event, and this event. And I will move them to another event graph. And comment it like moving up and down. So now when I will move mouse wheel on the client side, it will also move on the server side. The same thing is done with allocation. So let's open make trace, and on make trace we're making a trace, and here I've created a new event called set building location and added allocation. So this event just executes on the server. It sets it sets we don't need oh okay, we need this for a smooth movement of a building, and we've made this, and we only change building location in the server because our building is replicated. And after that, I'm calling the same on the client, because without that, it will do something like, it will look something like this. I don't know if it is visible on a recording, but movement is a little bit laggy. So here I'm also calling this on the client, and after that it looks very smooth. So for this event, server set building location replicates on the server, and set building location owner set building location events that do exactly the same, does exactly the same. It okay, it is multicast event. I don't know why it is multicast. It should run only on owning client. It works, but it is not needed. So yes, it's should be set to run only on owning client. Next about movement is a rotation. So we're setting a rotation in our inputs, and every tick we call rotate building if needed. And here we are adding actor world rotation and updating this rotation on the server. So I have two events, also server set building rotation and multicast set building rotation. Also, I think I don't need multicast because building replicates. It should work without multicast. No, it doesn't work without multicast. No, I'm sorry. That's because I didn't connect. I connected it incorrectly. So it should look like this. I have experimented a lot with replication, so I found some issues, as you saw. So here is how it looks like. Okay, and we don't need the multicast event here. Okay, then we talked about movement. Now let's talk about placement of a building. Here, when we have input event, input action place building on our left mouse button, can build. I don't know why it is replicated in construction component, because construction component is not replicated by itself. So let's continue on the building component. We're changing building state to building. It should be changed only on the client side. So not on client side, on the side of machine. So only one that has placed building with its hammer will see building in the building state and not in the previous state. For example, if I'm placing small number here, if I will left click, it will be on preview state only on client side and not on server side. And if I will equip a hammer on the server side, this building will also be in building state. That's how it works. Now let's continue. So we changing the building state, and here we are nulling our selected building, and I'm calling this on a server. So and multicasting. So everyone will have its building nulled. Also, this event replicates on server and it is reliable, and it calls multicast set building, and here we're setting a building, and here we don't pass in anything, it just nothing. Current z of z offset, so also it should be called on the server side, server set current z offset to 0. Next, now we can place building, rotate, move it, and it will be visible on both client side and server side. And now the hardest part of everything here is the way we build our building. So let's start. At first, on make trace here, I replaced we had a variable to build part component, current build part. I replaced it to current build part actor. So here I'm not setting a build part component, I'm setting a build part actor, as you can see here. And here I'm getting its build part component, resources to build, and updating it with resources. The problem is that my house, for example, it contains a lot of child actor components, and the child actor component uh, is hardly replicated. It's not replicated, it creates instances of actors, and we have to do some manual changes to make it work. So that way that we will change correct build part component. So the problem is that we cannot replicate build part component. Now, what happens when we click? Also, let's open build part component. I have a major change there. Let's open event graph. It is not replicated. It's not needed. So here on event begin play, I'm getting an owner, getting its object name. Object name is unique name. I'm using it instead of some unique ID, and setting its object name as a tag for this actor. Yeah. So now, building back to building component, when on build event is called, it is called when a notify in our animation occurred. We are checking if character is locally controlled. So we don't need to, because this notify will be called on everyone who sees a player, and we don't need this event to be called on everyone where our player animates. So when character is locally controlled, then we are calling a server build event. And what we're doing, we are taking object name of our current build part actor, because we not we can't provide an event with an actor. We can't send an actual actor to a server so that it will know with what actor he will work. and we can't replicate it because it is an actor of a child actor component. So to access it, we are sending to a server a tag of this actor, and the tag is its object name that I set here. So we have this event server built, and in inputs it has an actor tag. After that, I'm getting all actors with tag, getting the first actor from this array, and getting this event reliable and run on server. And this, after getting the sector, we are getting its build part component. And on this build part component, we are calling build from inventory function. And we are getting a character, getting its inventory component, and passing it as parameter to that function. So let's open a build from inventory function here. It has some small changes. So let's open the sequence and go step by step. This remains the same. This also remains the same. The same. Here, after find item, we are calling remove from inventory. In my case, previously I called I have set item set it array element at index, but now I am calling remove from inventory. I just changed places. So I removed from inventory. If success, called removed item dispatcher as previously done. And then I'm checking as previously done if new amount is greater than 0. Then instead of this event that I've created, we've had something like this, like set array element. We don't need these events. This component is not replicated, and so it does the same as previously. You can leave here, you know, as it was previously. And after all of that, I connect them to this pin that goes to break of for each loop. So after this completed, then sequence part 2 is called, and I check if left resources is empty. I think we've done it previously, and if a list of resources needed to build is empty, then we change in this part state to build it, calling dispatcher as previously. And what I've added a return node here so that we can return an array of resources left. So that's done um, very easily. You just add the return node output of your function here. In my case, it is as built resource that we've created. Now let's go back to building component. After I've called build from inventory from a server build, we bind in an event as previously, and now is the main part. Why do we need this array? We need to tell every client to update resources needed to build on their build part components. That we're doing that because build part component cannot be replicated, and it differs on every client and server. These are different components, and so I wanna send every client from a server a list of resources left so that they will update their components with resources left. But I can't send an entire array of structures. I have to send it by some primitives like int, boolean, string, or something else. So in that case, JSON comes to help us in using the blueprints we have to open settings, plugins, and type here JSON and select JSON blueprint utilities. If you don't know what is JSON, you better read what it is. It is needs to be known not only for server client work, but it can be needed everywhere if you want to store something in the scepter. Now, let's continue. I've created a function here called make.json from resources array so that I can take an array of as-built resource structures and return a JSON here so that I will be able to send it to every client. Now let's open a make.json from resources array. Here it is. I'm getting a as-built resource array and JSON plugin has a function called convert struct to JSON string, and we can put struct here. It will return us a JSON string. It doesn't work, unfortunately. I don't know, maybe that some blueprints limits with an array. It cannot create us a JSON from JSON with array of objects. And for my struct, it doesn't work because my struct has one of parameter as data table row handle. In your case, if you have some primitive parameters, or even if you have another structure here that has primitive parameters that can be converted somehow to a string, that will work for you. In my case, JSON converter don't know how to convert data table row handle into a string. So for that case, I've created a new structure called as-built resource codable. I'm not sure about terminology used in Unreal or C++. I'm an iOS developer, and in our case, it's called codable, decodable, encodable, codable, decodable. So this structure has an amount and a row name, types of string and integer with the primitive types, so that it can be converted to JSON. And what I'm doing here in building component in this function, I'm looking through each element of my as-built resource structure array, breaking this build resource, breaking it resource parameter, that is the data table row handle, and from these two parameters, I'm making a structure build resource codable. And I have local variables for this function, like codable resources of type as build resource codable, and it is an array. And for each item of this array, I'm creating structure as build resource codable and adding it to a local array. So if I had, for example, 10 resources in this array, then I will receive 10 resources of this array after converting. It works like mapping. I'm mapping from this array to this array. After this is completed, then I'm looping through each local codable resources. It can be done in less algorithmic time. For example, let me do it right now. Let me move this here, and it will be done by n time, not doubled n. And I will delete this and do this. Now, after I'm adding a local codable, a new struct to local codable resource, I am converting, calling this convert struct to JSON string, that function that I called. And it can work with that structure because it has primitives like string and integer. And it returns as a JSON string, and I'm adding it to a local array JSONs. And after a loop has completed, I'm returning these JSONs. Now let's go back to event graph. Here on server build, after build from inventory, I'm calling this function, passing this array and getting an array of strings, JSONs, and then passing them to a multicast on build function. Also, I'm passing a tag that server build received. So what multicast on build does? Multicast will execute on every client and server, so I'm checking. We don't need to execute it on server again. So I'm checking if current machine is a server, and if it is not, we are getting all actors with this tag, getting the first, getting build part component. After that, I'm calling a function make resources array from JSON. So now uh, on every client, I will convert these JSON's array back to structures. So let's do that. Let's watch how it works. So I have a function that receives an array of strings, JSONs, and I have local variables like local resources decoded and local build resources. First one is type of my as-built resource codable, and the second as-built resource. Now for each JSON's array element, I'm loading JSON from string to receive a JSON object. If it is successfully loaded, then I'm getting a field of JSON called uh, as here. So as in my structure, row name and amount precisely. So they are case sensitive. So don't put any spaces. Okay, spaces doesn't matter. Just check that these field names are equal to your names here. So after loading JSON from the string, I'm getting a field with row name, and after that I'm getting a field with amount, and making my as-built resource codable structure. Here I'm building it and adding it to my array of resources decoded. Then on completed, also it can be done here, and we will prevent looping twice on array, but in that case array will never be very big, so it doesn't affect a lot. I will not do it now. So next I'm looping through the decoded resources, breaking every one of them, row name and amount. And now I'm creating from this structure, build resource codable, my build resource structure here. And for resource, I'm making data table row handle. Here I'm selecting my data table DT items. It is already selected. And that is the reason this data table is the reason why the structure cannot be encoded to JSON, because it is a big question how can data items be represented in JSON format. But doesn't matter for now. So I'm taking a row name, plugging it here. I'm taking amount, plugging it here, and adding it to my second array, build resources. And finally, on the completion, we will have an array of build resources. Maybe it sounds complex, but it is very easy. It will be very easy as soon as you will understand how it works. So here on multicast on build, um, I'm making a resources array from JSON and calling on build part component update with resources. Update with resources is a function that I've created in build part component. Let's open it. It's a function that sets build resources and checks if they are empty, then it changes part state to build it and calls on build it dispatcher. The same as it does, the same as it did in build from inventory here. And multicast is set to multicast, of course. And it seems like that's all. I hope I didn't forget anything. So if you will mention that I forgot to tell about something or it will not work on your side, feel free to write in comments. And now I will show how it looks like, and I will add how it looks like in the beginning of the video. So let's start with a server and two clients. I have one client and I have second client and I have a server here. So let's select this client, for example. I will equip a hammer and build, as you see, everyone sees a template and I can build it here, go here, uh, build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stones here, select a server, equip, uh, add resources to inventory, build 1, 2, 3, so that it is 2 stones remains, equip hammer from another client and add resources and finish building. So also I found a bug that is not related to a server or client. It is related to a building system. For example, if I will build a basement, and then I will hide hammer and show it again. So basement looks like it isn't built. And that's very strange that I didn't mention it before. To fix it, let's open a construction component here and open set previewing state. And here, when we are looping through each actor, getting their component, getting their child actor's build part component and changing part state to unbuilded, we should check if we should only update this part state if it is if it was already builded, then we should not update this part state. So let's go here and here on build part component where we are changing the state and where we are um, um, in place where in build from inventory, when here we are changing part state to build it. Okay, if it was set to build it once, let's add a flag. Let's open a building part state here. first, and add new state, build it, unbuild it, none. None is a state when it is when it wasn't changed. So by default, building state will be, let's compile, will be what uh, building part state, building part state, none, save, compile. Here it is, and we select by default it is none. And here on change part state, we are doing we're changing the state to unbuild it only if current state get state if it is equal to none. If it is equal, if it is equal to none and state is not equal to build it. And here, no, that's wrong. Uh, don't know what I've done. So if state we want to set is equal to unbuild it, if it is equal to unbuild it, and then we are checking if current state equal to none. And only in this case, we are calling all these functions. And if we're setting not unbuilt but something else, we also calling these functions. And that will fix this issue. Okay. Um, and not only uh, and if part state equal none or equal unbuild it, because we're calling this to update materials and etc. Here is how it looks like, and now it should work. Yes, let me build basement, hide hammer, show hammer, and here is how it looks like. Now, let me show how it looks with clients. Okay, this should be smaller, and this should be smaller. Now, client one, it, it is a little bit laggy because I have an Unreal opened and 3 windows of game opened. Selecting small number, it moved everywhere, rotated everywhere, moved up, down, everywhere, placing it, adding resources to an inventory, and 1, 2, 3, 4 stones from this client. Now of 1, 2, 3, 3 stones from server, and finish building from this, adding resources from this client. That's how it looks like. So thanks for watching. Hope it will help someone.